Welcome everybody. Good evening. Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim. Thank you, Raya and Mordechai, for hosting this great class. I'm very excited about this class because as we start a new chapter, chapter 27, in the series of Seriously Happy, of how to overcome different challenges in our lives, and this should bring us to Simcha. This lesson is going to pretty much capture the entire Tanya. Wow, that's a great challenge. But I think, and I am confident, that we will hopefully succeed in this challenge. The Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinonim, the book of Beinonis. What does it mean to be a Beinoni? That's the intermediate level. You have a tzaddik at the top, a righteous person. You have the rasha at the bottom, an evil person. And the Beinoni is right there in the middle. The halachic terminology of a Beinoni is someone that has half merits and half sins. Half mitzvahs and half sins. A tzaddik is all meritorious. A rasha has all sins. And the Beinoni is right there in the middle. But if there's one theme, or one of the themes that goes through the entire Tanya, is being a Sefer Shel Beinonim, a book of how a Beinoni should act, is actually how great a Beinoni is. Not in halachic terms, but in general terms. To be a Beinoni is a very high level. If you're a Beinoni, according to the Tanya, then you are perfect not only in the observance of all mitzvot and learning Torah, but also in your thought, speech, and deed. You are perfect. The story is told about a great chassid, Rabbi Hillel of Parich. Wow, Rabbi Hillel of Parich, the Tzemach Tzedek said about him, Rabbi Hillel of Parich was the chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but 250 years ago, the Mittler Rebbe, Rabbi Dovber, the second Rebbe, and the third Rebbe. He was 105 when he passed away, and he was the rabbi of Parich for 80 years. From 25 to 105. Very great chassid, to the extent that the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, said about him that I have 2.5 chassidim. I don't know who the two were. I think one of them was Rabbi Isaac of Hummel. The other one must have been a very, very great chassid. So I was always curious, well, who's the half a chassid? Either you're a chassid or you're not a chassid. But you can't be a half a chassid. So they asked him, what does it mean, who is the half a chassid? And what does it mean to be a half a chassid? He said, well, the half a chassid is Rabbi Hillel of Parich. Why? Because he's a half a Rebbe. That's how great he is. So Rabbi Hillel of Parich, when he started learning Chassidut, he said, I've always thought that I was a tzaddik. But when I started to learn Chassidut and the Tanya, I realized that I'm not a tzaddik. In fact, Hala Beinoni. I wish I was a Beinoni. Raya?
Rabbi, we're losing you off and on the last 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Seconds. Rabbi, talk so I can hear if you're live.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. So in the first chapter of this series, chapter 26 of the Tanya, we talked about different challenges that can approach a person and sort of get in the way of them being besimcha, being happy. But today in the chapter 27, we're gonna start to deal with a different type of depression, a different type of sadness. And that is a sadness, a spiritual level, a spiritual type of sadness. A person can say, oy vey, if I'm learning about how difficult it is to be a Beinoni, and now you want me to be happy? I've always aspired to be a tzaddik, and now I'm learning that it's virtually impossible to be a tzaddik for a regular person. And the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us how we should be happy with the challenges that Hashem gave us, including spiritual challenges. Okay. So when we say the Shema, in the third paragraph, we talk about the tzitzit. And also we talk about the exodus of Mitzrayim, Yetziat Mitzrayim. Right in the middle over there, there is a little verse that crawls right in and states as follows. V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareim. Do not allow your heart and your eyes to turn away into the wrong places. You walk in the street and you see something that should not be looked at, that doesn't go according to the Torah, whether contradicting Hashem's oneness, or perhaps someone dressed improperly. V'lo taturu. V'lo taturu acharei levavchem. Do not look after your eyes, after your heart and eyes. Asher atem zonim achareim, which one can, God forbid, it can bring a person to go off the deep end and to do a sin. So the obvious question is, if the Torah is telling us not to go after our hearts and eyes, so how can you establish that we do go after them? Asher atem zonim achareim, that you turn away from the regular path of Torah. And if, on the other hand, if we know to begin with that Hashem created us in a way that when there is something which doesn't necessarily go according to the ways of Torah, so how can you tell us to refrain from that? How can you tell us, V'lo taturu acharei levavchem acharei einechem? The answer is as follows. Hashem created us, regular people, in a way that we have motives. And naturally, our eyes see things, and after our eyes, our heart desires and lusts. And that can bring a person, God forbid, to sink deep into the impurity. Any type of impurity. So number one, the Torah recognizes who we are. The Torah basically, Hashem is telling us, I understand, I know that I created you. We even talked about it to divert for a moment in that last week's Parsha. Hashem creates Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, and then the generations to come. And for a long time, they're not acting appropriately. And then at the end, Hashem says, I have decided to wipe out the world. I have decided to get rid of this human being. Why? Ki yetzer lev ha'adam ra min urav. The yetzer, the inclination for a human being is evil. Therefore, Hashem says, I want to get rid of them. And then, in this week's parsha, when we talk about the flood, it's turned around. Hashem says, I understand that I created the human being the way he is. Therefore, there's no point in me wiping out the world. So the same exact reason for Hashem wanting to wipe out the world and bring a flood in the end of last week's parsha is the same reason that Hashem vows in this week's parsha never to bring a flood again. Never to bring such destruction again to the world. What's the bottom line? The bottom line is that Hashem created us and Hashem knows our challenges. Hashem is talking to you and I, to regular human beings who have challenges of all sorts. And today, with modern technology, the challenges are much more than we ever had in our history, in the 5,781 years of our history. And so therefore, Hashem is talking to you and I on our level, eye to eye, and saying, I know who you are. I know. Don't worry. The Torah was not given to angels. Asher atem zonim achareim. I know that when there is something in the street, something that's there, naturally your eye will turn away. I'm not going to say it's okay, but basically Hashem is saying, I understand. Then comes the mitzvah, the prohibitive mitzvah, v'lo taturu, do not look. Immediately when you see this, turn your eye away. Don't keep staring at that forbidden sight. And don't allow your heart to be drawn after that forbidden image. That's why we have to have filters on our cell phones and our internet. Because no one can say, I am a tzaddik and I'm protected. No. We're all human beings. And Hashem understands us. Hashem created us with inclinations. Good inclination and unfortunately an evil inclination. And the evil inclination seeks to turn us off the right path. So our job is, if God forbid our eyes turn somewhere, immediately to look forward or to immediately look into a holy sefer or to a holy picture of a tzaddik. And looking at the picture of a tzaddik helps us. It elevates us. It's exactly like the story of Yosef HaTzaddik. Yosef was unfortunately thrown into the pit by his own brothers. Then he was sold to the Ishmaelites, to the Arabs. And they sold him to another group until they came to Mitzrayim. And he came to Potiphar's home. And Potiphar's wife wanted to have relationship, with Yosef. And Yosef got out of it every time. Until one time there was no one there. And she grabbed his jacket. He left it in her hands and he ran. What did Yosef himself say that saved him? Yosef himself indicates to us what was it that saved him. Dumut diyukno shel aviv nir'alo. The image, the holy image of Yaakov Avinu, of Yosef's father, was right there in his eyes. And that saved him from the most terrible sin. And so, getting back to this mitzvah of the Torah, which the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about, we're going to learn it soon inside. The Alter Rebbe explains that Hashem gives this mitzvah to every human being, every regular person, which is even a Beinoni, which is a very, very high level, as I started telling you earlier. At the same time, the same Torah tells us, V'lo taturu, do not turn there. Because the Torah was given to regular human beings. And we have a mitzvah, and we have the power, the ability to overcome all of those tests. And so the Alter Rebbe adds something very interesting. And this is a big chidush in my humble opinion. It's a very innovative concept, and that is that this mitzvah was not given to a real tzaddik. Can you believe it? Wow, that's fascinating. I'll say it again. There are very few tzaddikim, real tzaddikim. You have to learn the Tanya for many days, weeks, and months and more. But when you learn the Tanya, especially chapters 9 and 10, you'll realize that a tzaddik is a very, very holy level. Not only does he do all the mitzvot, not only does he learn Torah all day, not only is he perfect in his thought, speech, and action, but he actually has succeeded to uproot the evil in his heart. That's very unusual. In the first chapter of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe quotes our sages, the Medrash that says that David HaMelech, King David, a classical example of a true tzaddik, says in chapter 109 in the Tehillim, Belibi chalal b'kirbi. My heart is empty within me. Empty? Empty of what? Void of what? Void of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is that inclination that gets your heart to do another sin and to get deep, to dig deeper into it. But to get rid of the Yetzer Hara, wow, that's a very, very high level. To get rid of you can control the Yetzer Hara. You can get yourself. You can train oneself not to go along with the convincing of the Yetzer Hara and the pep talk of the Yetzer Hara, but to get rid of it, that's like when Mashiach comes, we're all going to be tzaddikim. And when we're all tzaddikim, there's not going to be Yetzer Hara anymore. The Yetzer Hara will be slaughtered when Mashiach comes. So what does it mean that the tzaddik doesn't have a Yetzer Hara? We cannot explain it in one class, and definitely not in 30 seconds. But let's suffice to say that there are very few and far between that are really on the level of a tzaddik. Now, there are different types of tzaddikim. The Talmud says in Tractate Sanhedrin, just to give you an example, that there are 36 hidden tzaddikim in every generation, and different levels of how we cut the cake and how we categorize exactly what the tzaddikim are. Then we have Bnei Aliyah, the elevated levels of tzaddikim. And then you have the highest tzaddik of the generation, and sometimes there are two. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai even says, if there are two, it's my son and myself, my son Elazar. And if there's one, it's me, the biggest tzaddik of the generation. And this is obviously the real ultimate level of a tzaddik. And so, this is sort of, so just to summarize the innovation, what the Alter Rebbe says today. He says that really, a tzaddik doesn't have this mitzvah because their eyes don't even turn that way, to the wrong way. Every regular person, including special people, including holy people, like Rabbi Hillel of Parich, we said in the beginning of the class, Halavai Beinani, Halavai, I wish I was a Beinani. And the Torah was given to every single person, Sefer Shel Beinanim. And the Alter Rebbe, by writing a Sefer Shel Beinanim, wanted to write a book which can talk to the regular person, you and I, which we aspire to be on a very high level every day, every moment. We try to do more and more mitzvot. But eventually, we have to realize our potential. We have to realize what we're able to do. And we have to realize what we're not able to do. And so, if the Torah gives us a mitzvah, then that means that Hashem gives us the ability, that the moment that we're walking in the street and we see something which we should not be looking at, immediately we turn our heads. Immediately. Sometimes it's hard, but we do it because that's the mitzvah. And so the question really is as follows. That a person can be sort of sad within oneself. A person can say, wow, if I've been working so hard to do mitzvot, and in one moment, by looking away at a place that I should not, it seems like I can ruin, I can damage all of the work that I've done. This challenge is so great. It's basically an ongoing challenge for all practical purposes. It's on and on and on. That's a very, very difficult challenge. It can put a person, I don't like to, but on some level, it can make a person, almost bring a person to give up. God forbid. So how are we supposed to view ourselves in our challenges, in our spiritual challenges where we're trying to overcome and we're trying to elevate ourselves and we're trying to ascend above all challenges? Here's where the Alter Rebbe we read now in the beginning of chapter 27. And then I have an amazing story to share with you. The Alter Rebbe says as follows: whether you have the original text, or you have the lessons in Tanya, or you have Rabbi Miller's Tanya, Raya, can you hear me?
We lost about 30 seconds, 45 seconds right there.
Okay, so now we're opening. I'm glad you can hear me now. And now we're opening up to chapter 27. If someone's sadness is not because of past sins, rather, mehir hurim roim, from bad thoughts, v'tavot rot, and bad cravings, evil cravings, shenoflot b'machshavto, that currently are in the person's mind. It's a new type of sadness, that there's always these, not only things that come up in the street when we're walking, but even at our desk, when one can be looking at the internet, and perhaps even dreaming in bed, but thinking about thoughts that are not appropriate. A person can feel down and say, I'm trying so hard, I'm doing so many mitzvot, and nevertheless my heart and my mind have cravings for the wrong things. How do I overcome all of this? Hine, behold, im noflot lo b'shelo b'shat avodah, if these bad ideas fall into his mind not when he's serving Hashem, ela be'eit isko, only when he's working, ba'asakav, in his business, v'derech eretz, and the way of the land, just doing his own thing, okay, gavna, and etc. Adarabba, on the contrary, not only you should not be sad, but listen to this, only the Alter Rebbe could say this. Yesh lo lismoach b'chelko. You should be happy. Yes, I'll say it again. You should be happy. She'af shenoflot lo b'machshavto, even though they occur to him in his mind. Nevertheless, hu mesiach da'ato mehen. He takes He shuns away his mind from them. Lekayem ma shene'emar, to fulfill what it says. V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. This is the verse that I mentioned in the introduction to the holy words of the Tanya. Do not turn after your heart and after your eyes. Asher atem zonim achareim, that your eyes turn away after them. Ve'ein hakatuv medaber, the verse does not only speaks, the first does not speak about tzadikim. Likar am zonim chas v'shalom. The Torah would never call it tzaddik, someone that they turn away from the Hashem's ways. Ela bebeinanim kayotzebo. Only by the beinanim, which is the Alter Rebbe said in chapter 12, that it's midat kol adam, it's the measure, it's the way that every person should aspire for. V'achareha kol adam nimshoch. Everyone should be drawn after and aspire to be a beinanim. Shenoflim lo hirhure niuf b'machshavto. That bad thoughts, immoral thoughts, may fall into a person's mind. Bein beheter chulu ucheshemesiach dato mekayem lavze. In any way that this will occur, it's wrong, and right away you have to send your mind away from those evil thoughts. So if someone is doing something immoral, they have to stop right away. They've stopped doing the sin. If someone talks about these things, speech, stop talking about it. It's almost easy. As soon as you catch yourself, you just stop. But thought is very difficult because hamachshava meshotetet tamid. Thought is always going. We're always thinking. Even if we're not talking, we're always thinking. Our minds, even if we're not thinking about any special intellectual matter, we're always thinking. That's just how we are. So you can't stop thinking. You just have to switch this thought for another thought. Instead of thinking one thing which is immoral, improper, you simply have to change your gears. V'amru Aboteinu Zal, and our sages told us, a blessed memory, Yashav v'lo avar avera, if someone sat and did not do a sin, notnim lo sachar ki'ilu asa mitzvah. We give him a reward as if he did a mitzvah. V'alkein, and therefore, tzarich l'smoach, we have to be happy if a person has these thoughts. B'kiyum halav, because we're fulfilling a mitzvah. Every time we fulfill a mitzvah, we have to be happy. Kamo b'kiyum mitzvah, the same mamash, as if we're really doing a positive mitzvah, because we are. So, this is step number one. If we're talking about a state of where a person is doing his own stuff and immoral thoughts come into their mind, or they see something, or someone is talking about something, or someone doing something which is improper, then right away, make a switch, change gears. And here's the point, here's the catch. Instead of this pulling you down, instead of this putting a person in depression and to be sad, it should be the contrary. It should be uplifting. It should be encouraging for the person. That now the person has a mitzvah to listen to the Torah. V'lo taturu, move your head away. Change your thoughts. Change gears. And this will give you the ability to be able to stick to the ways of Hashem. I just want to finish off with one story that was told by the Rebbe's Shliach in Belgium, in Antwerp, Rabbi Shabtai Slavatitsky. There was an individual who started coming to the Chabad house on a regular basis. He started keeping Shabbos, putting on tefillin every day. And one time, at the end of a long farbrengen, the person sat next to Rabbi Shabtai, and he said to him, he started crying, he said, I've been coming a really long way. But he told Rabbi Slavatitsky that unfortunately there's only one thing that's very, very hard for him to overcome. And that was that beforehand he had been dating a non-Jewish girl, and he was having trouble parting from her. It was just too hard for him. And so they talked. He tried to explain to him, but it was way too tempting for him. And so Rabbi Sloboditsky said, why don't you go to the Rebbe? The Rebbe's giving out dollars, or maybe it was in time of Yechidut. I think it was by dollars. And hopefully the Rebbe can give you direction and inspiration. And so he said, okay, fine. He went to the Rebbe. He told the Rebbe in short his challenge. And the Rebbe said, I am jealous of you. Huh? The Rebbe? Jealous of me? What's there to be jealous about? And the Rebbe explained. Hashem gives every person the challenge that they can take. And there are some people that have greater challenges than others. Those people that don't have those challenges, it's possible that if Hashem would have given them the challenges of the other people that have greater challenges, so to speak, maybe they would not have been able to stand up to that challenge. So the fact that Hashem gave you that challenge is a proof that you have the ability to be able to stand up to it. And many people that have heard the story, this has helped them because the Rebbe speaks to the person, to the individual, sees the potential deep down and encourages them to uplift themselves and to get out of stand up to the test. So Bezrat Hashem, you're welcome to join us every Tuesday evening at 7:30. Every morning at 9:30 for half hour, we learn Chassidus now. We have we're learning a mimer of the Rebbe Rashab. Great mimer about the knowledge of Hashem. Friday mornings, we do Kabbalah Cafe right here at 9:30 a.m. Next Tuesday night, big announcement. We have a special lecture by our very own Chanoch Rubel, who's going to give us a fascinating talk on the subject of the letter Hey. And according to the Kabbalah, stay tuned. And Bezrat Hashem, the advertisement will be soon on WhatsApp and on our email of Chabad of Rechavia. If you don't yet get our emails, then please send me an email to rabbi@jerusalemchabad.org. All the best. Have a great evening.